this is going to be another Warcraft 3 audio commentary from Scry Mind. This game is going to feature some interesting hero choices and strategies. Not exactly the standard in this matchup, and on Twisted Meadows 1v1, Jake is going to be the blue undead at the top left spawn. His opponent is the orange human at the top right spawn. And yeah, there's going to be a little bit of a troll chat if you're interested in that as well. So now, also after this game, I will be doing a second. I'll be commenting a second replay with sort of a similar theme, different matchup, but this one is there's a lot of creeping in this game, and then just a few battles here and there. So it should go pretty quickly. But if you take a look at Jake's base, it looks like he might be doing a fiend build. There's lots of variations off of this kind of build order. You can do extra ghouls to tech quick, Ted fiends or whatnot, or you can just go for maybe a tower rush or something crazy. Not exactly what I would suggest against a human player. Now if we look at the human player, he actually is not building his hero at the altar right here, so, and he's sending this peasant to the tavern, so you might expect he's going to get a tavern hero. If you look at Jake, he's not building that fiend, he's going to get another ghoul. So, and now if you look at this hero, he's getting a dreadlord. So again, sometimes common for dreadlord players to expand quickly. He's pretty decent for expanding and everything. Now the human player is going to go with a panda, which is actually a very strong hero against the undead. Again, it might, he doesn't get quite as he's not quite as good at creeping certain camps on this map like the Archmage would be. Again, he doesn't do very well against the lab camp creeps, but against the the shop, he's pretty effective there. None of those are magic immune. They're pretty clumped together and everything. But the main thing with the panda is, in the late game, he can get pretty crazy. Pretty much once he gets to a certain level, everything but maybe undead tier 3 units get pretty much rocked by his AoE attacks. Again, you can try to spread spread your units and use heal scrolls and statues, etc. Maybe anti-magic shield is like your only saving grace if you can pull that off. But again, it's kind of out of the way of the tech tree most of the time. So high level panda, really strong against undead tier 1 and 2 units. Again, destroyers pretty much the kind of the best against them because they're the only undead magic immune unit. So yeah, they can, but that'll set it up to where you can't. It's kind of hard to just mass destroyers against a human because there's some pretty strong counters to it if they see it coming. And then you're left with not a lot of options once you put yourself there. So, but anyway, sometimes that can work. If you can really outmass them, destroyers can be very strong against human, especially if they don't scout it. So, now you see he was kind of sloppy here creeping this. He lost some footmen, kind of didn't heal before he did it, so that was kind of sloppy play. He did he did get level 3 and then ran away. He didn't fully finish it. He just went level 3, which is pretty good. I think he should have just went to this orange camp and got level 3 instead, or maybe this camp over here. But again, he made that choice to go there. Now here is a battle Jake has to avoid because aside from being slightly outnumbered in a unit count, level 3 hero, again, orange did a pretty good move, force attacking his panda, even though level 1 sleep, it probably would have faded anyway, duration, but he force attacked the hero, wake him up, and he's going to try to get some more kills here. He does actually get another kill. So yeah, footmen beat tier 1 ghouls pretty much straight up in a fight. They have about 80 more hit points and 2 more armor compared to no armor, base armor for the ghouls without upgrades. Now once he gets into the undead base, it's a little bit of a different story though, because he can use the corpses at the graveyard for skeletons, and also he has these towers set up, and halls of the dead once they get to tier 2. Now you'll notice that orange, if we take a look at his view, he has not really been scouting at all this game. Again, running into that base was pretty much the only scouting, quote unquote, he has done. Though that technically should have been enough to clue him in You know, he saw Blue's hero. He might have looked at his items. Barring that, though, he was not finished with his tech, which, you know, even if he doesn't know that, you know, one kind of a little bit common strategy for Dreadlord users is to expand quickly, or that you should just, you know, as a rule of thumb, make sure you're checking expansions. If your opponent's tech is slow, you know, that's a pretty big clue that, hey, you know, something interesting. Either he's a little bit bad, sloppy play, you know, slow to tech, or, you know, he expanded, you know, instead of taking up at the normal speed or quickly. So, you know, going in there, he should have, you know, maybe been thinking, hey, you know, I'm down in expansion, or I possibly am down in expansion. But he doesn't really make any attempt to counter it, honestly, counter expand or harass or whatnot. Now Jake did a Zeppelin harass. He got an invisibility potion and ran in here, and he's going to get some kills. For some reason, he's not really using sleep. You know, carrying would have been pretty strong there, but again, he went sleep. Sleep would have been decent to stop the healing from the priest, I think. Again, kind of odd. I guess he was saving the mana for a real battle, but at any rate, he got a few kills, and the main goal, though, is to distract him, because the longer this is up, you know, even if he didn't get any kills, the better off he's going to be. And plus, he doesn't have a very big army right now. But, as you see, Jake is saying he found a hole in his opponent's strategy. He's seen his buildings, what he can produce, and what he has already produced, priests and footmen, and Panda Archmage. And he realizes that, you know, the only thing that can, out of that whole army, that can actually hit a destroyer is the Archmage. And he actually went Blizzard, but, you know, water elementals just get devoured, devour magic by the destroyers anyway. So he won't even have water elementals, though. He'll just have the Archmage, you know, unless he makes some changes. So Jake is going to try to exploit this. He's put up 2 more slaughterhouses, and he's going to be massing destroyers. He's already at tier 3. He's getting the attack upgrades now. So again, we can kind of assume this is going to be his play. He's going to try to overwhelm the human based on the weakness that he doesn't have much anti-air. Now, he's throwing up these scattered guard towers, which, you know, they don't even have the masonry upgrades right now, but being scattered so far is not that great. They're not going to be able to you know, concentrate their attacks at the same time. You know, you can take one at a time out, and, you know, not going to be all that effective, honestly, especially against the massive destroyers. They take extra. The heavy armor takes extra from the magic damage of the destroyers. And yeah, so there's going to be that situation. Now Orange is camping his base for, you know, I guess to fend off the ghouls. You know, again, once the towers get up, you know, you can pretty much maybe leave a couple of priests in there if he wants to, or footmen, but pretty much needs to be doing something right now, because, you know, Blue is not resting on his laurels. Even though he's got a fairly small army in terms of this game, the time in the game that he's creeping with, he's going to be able to easily, you know, finish this camp. You know, this is kind of, I don't know if Blue just kind of looks into this this creepjack a little bit. You know, it doesn't look super suspicious, but you never know. You never know with BNet what can be people could be doing as far as map hacking. You know, not that I say this guy's a map hacker, since clearly he never tried to touch this expansion, and clearly he, you know, he did a terrible job at countering these statues. But at any rate, you know, when you're playing, you gotta, you know, be aware. Some people do cheat, and you know, if you recognize that quick enough, you know, you can try to play to mitigate that advantage. But, you know, it's still pretty tough. You know, you're not going to be able to kind of catch them with their pants down with some sort of all-in strategy like, you know, mass destroyers. If he'd have been getting gyros to counter instead of he's getting these Dragonhawks from one aviary, plus he's down an expansion in terms of economy, so it's going to be hard for him to just have the same mass of units, especially on one production building. He's pretty much too far behind to do it that way. He is trying to creep up, but again, these hero levels they're not even going to matter in terms of fighting the actual destroyer army. Again, if he was pushing right now, then maybe this level 2 Breath of Fire and, you know, level 3 Blizzard or whatever he comes out with, I assume he gets Blizzard at level 3. But yeah, and all these defended footmen, they can have defend and healing. You know, they could wreck through that expansion. You know, if you'd have pushed it at a certain point. But as it stands now, you know, this Death Ball army, this giant army of destroyers is. Plus, he's doing the trick where you absorb the mana before you morph the statues, which is pretty crucial because it gives like plus 20 damage in attack as long as they have mana for Orb of Annihilation. And that's almost double the damage. Even with the level 3 attack upgrades, their base damage is like, it was like about 26. So almost double the damage from just that Orb of Annihilation, and it does splash damage. So against clumped up units, it's going to be just brutal. Honestly, I think it would have been pretty effective and maybe a little funny if Jake would have did a Tome of Retraining and got Carrion Swarm for all those footmen, peasants, and everything. But again, you know, he doesn't even need it. He doesn't even actually need his hero for this fight coming up, I don't think. Kind of tipped it. But if you take a look, you know, 6 or 7 D-Hawk Riders with 1 attack upgrade is not going to be anything against destroyers with mana and 3 attack upgrades. I mean, even with these towers, there's only a few of them. He actually runs in here and he just ignores the towers for a little bit. And he just shreds these Dragonhawk Riders. I don't even know if any of the destroyers died right off the bat. They just got melted. And he's TPing, but it doesn't matter because his army doesn't hit the destroyers. I mean, he could have. I mean, he would have been more effective. Not that he would have won, but any other action. I mean, TPing here was just like handing him the game. I mean, at that point, he didn't have any kind of hope of coming back in this game. But you know, I mean, he could have just left. It would have been just as effective as what he actually did. So, but I guess you say he's having his little last stand here and going for the 300 moment. Maybe the rest of the humans on BattleNet will mass up and try to stop the Persian God King that is Jake. But as it is, he didn't win that game. You know, the main takeaway I was kind of going for was you don't always have to cookie cut, do a cookie cutter strategy. Get Death Knight, get Demon Hunter, Blade Master, Archmage or whatever. You can get different heroes, and you can definitely get different units because, I mean, one of the most effective ways to beat your opponent is to make a counter army. And I mean, it's not exactly some kind of crazy novel concept that's unheard of, but a lot of players are going to just go the standard 90% of the time in solo, and yeah, it kind of takes away from the whole make strategic choices, try to counter creative gameplay that can make it very easy. I mean, you saw how one-sided that battle was. Now imagine, again, Jake was going to have a bigger army based on the expansion, and I assumed he's a little bit better player than that guy since the other guy didn't scout hardly at all, didn't expand, and all that, but lost units to creeps. But that last battle, I mean, if he would have had an army of, like, say, standard Fiend army with maybe a couple of Frost Worms, and the human had what he had, I think the human would have had a decent shot. I mean, as long as he got off some good Breath of Fire, Drunken Haze, got a couple of Blizzards on the Fiends to make them, move around or use heal scrolls or whatever. Defend on the Footmen, healing from the Priests. With those towers, I mean, he would, plus the militia, it would have been much harder for him just to run into that base and just wipe, everything. I know the Dragonhawk Riders were alone when they first came in there, but, against destroyers, it didn't make a difference whether his army was actually there or not, honestly. But, if it would have been Fiends and everything, Orange, if he fought with his whole army together, especially at his main base, I think he would have had decent odds to at least survive that first push. Winning the game with down expansion against Undead. Uphill battle, very hard to do. So now in this game we're gonna see Jake with a Paladin. and his opponent with the Keeper of the Grove. Kind of weird to go Paladin, especially weird to go Divine Shield first. Not very effective at all, really, but he is able to sort of harass almost with impunity, at least while the shield is up. Which, when he has Entangle, again, he could just pop the shield and counter the Entangle. Not that Entangle level 1 does that much to heroes, but anyway, as dumb as this looks, and admittedly it looks incredibly dumb, if you saw somebody doing this in a game, you would immediately think they're either a terrible player or a troll, which is going to be the troll situation, as Jake is about to tell his opponent. He wears a 6-size shoe in youth, and I think he's already told him that he is John Cena in real life. And there's going to be some really funny chat as this goes on if you read it, but anyway, he was effective at scouting his opponent. Again, he ran over here, he saw, a second Ancient War going up, he saw the Keeper with Entangle, he saw the Archers, and he saw this Hunter's Hall, and he maybe saw him, he probably saw him upgrading, so he's going to probably assume he's massing tier 1. Again, he already actually has 2 berries, which is decent. Again, defend really good against archers, though footmen not so good against huntresses. So, huntresses, as he masses up the huntresses, Jake is going to have to, without some kind of slow or bolt or anything, something else to kind of slow these hunts down, especially at night. It's going to be a battle Jake wants to avoid. Just foots against huntresses with a paladin, and again, defend is really great on this map for creeping. Even though actually he doesn't quite have it finished yet, which he maybe should have waited a second to mitigate some of his damage, but, a lot of these creeps do piercing damage. Pretty much every camp has on this map has piercing creeps, except for these 2 camps between these spawns, but yeah, they all, these greens, they have 3 piercing creeps, these oranges have 2. You can count them yourself. They all have trolls and turtles. So, and the turtles, these smaller ones do piercing. This one does chaos. Not a lot you can do to counter that. It's pretty hefty damage creeping this one, but again, defend is going to do a lot of work mitigating damage on this map. So footmen are a pretty decent unit to have on this map for creeping. And yeah, so I don't know if Jake assumed the guy was going to get some huntresses after his archers, probably, since he had the hunt hall. Though he hasn't really done too much. He's making a blacksmith now, but an expansion. So, already he's getting an advantage. As long as Teal doesn't push that expansion right now, he's going to pretty much be sitting pretty until he does. Whereas the elf is not really creeping nearly as hard as Jake is, and as Jake is just hit level 3. This elf is just barely over level 2, so he's about as much over level 2 as Jake is over level 3. So now Jake has decided to go Divine Shield, Devotion Aura. A little bit of a weird combination. A lot of times people want to have Holy Light, but this guy is going to let Jake have this expansion for a long time, so Jake's hero skill choice is going to be is not going to be the deciding factor here. So yeah, he sort of plays in a way to kind of take advantage of the strength of Devotion Aura, at least. But I'd say there are better hero skills in terms of damage reduction than Devotion Aura. Now it's a little bit of a different skill since it's not an aura but a spell. The Pit Lord's Howl of Terror is it reduces a lot of damage. I think at level 3 it reduces about 50% damage. Now he doesn't have level 3 Devotion Aura quite yet to look and see what it is, but again, it's not anywhere near 50%. So, at level 2, he's only got let's see, he's got 3 extra armor, a little bit under half damage, half of that damage reduction. So, what was that about? I don't know, maybe 12 or something, 12%. Yeah. So let's see. Well, I guess we could really calculate it out. 833, 4 per armor. So yeah. So yeah, about 12%, somewhere around there. So as you see, this is a battle Jake is going to lose somewhat, though he does get to get these creeps. Well, actually, I think Teal actually killed the Ogre Magi, which boo for Jake. He almost puts him at level, almost puts the keeper at level 3. Jake continued with the troll chat with the John Cena comments, and speed it up a bit. Now again, he doesn't have towers of the expansion. 2 huntresses could really throw the dynamics here and make Jake play on the defensive, which with footmen is really bad. But you notice he's switching to riflemen, throwing up a 3rd barracks. And again, kind of a similar theme as last time. He's going to decide to mass 1 unit and yeah, get a bunch of upgrades and just try to get a hard counter to his army, which is about half huntresses. Again, maybe more than half, since huntresses are more food than archers, and plus he's got 5 as opposed to 4. But again, a lot of huntresses, and yeah, rifles are pretty good against huntresses. I think in math they beat huntresses with the slight extra range, especially with the range upgrade. You know, they're decent, and you know, they're decent against archers, even though you would think with the Loon's Grace the archers would be you know, maybe a little better against them. But archers have like 200 fewer hit points, it looks like. Or whoa, I miscalculated. They have about 300 fewer hit points than the riflemen. So yeah, the riflemen with all this armor, extra armor from the devotion aura. In a bit, Jake is going to be utilizing scrolls and such. It's just going to be really tough. Now, again, we're on Teal's point of view. Even with the Fog of War off, though, we can look up and see that he's sitting on about 3,000 gold during that attack. He did not macro at all. He's got 100. He's just now starting to build more. He is at tier 1, just now taking tier 2. Huge mistake. I mean, not that you can't function off a tier 1 army, especially when your opponent massing a tier 1 army, but you know, there's no reason to be sitting on 3,000 gold. You know, I don't even think he was avoiding upkeep with that. I think that was just terrible decision making, terrible focus in this game. So just a bad choice. But now he's throwing up a 3rd Ancient of War. Kind of realizes, you know, he might get outnumbered. He's got the resources to fund 3 Ancients of War massing units. So gonna try to come back in this game and get some, even though he's really still going real slow with the production. Again, it's really good to hotkey your buildings so you don't have to go look at them and, you know, build stuff. You can just hit the, you know, whatever number you key them to and just hit the hotkey for whatever unit you want to build. So again, that's one little tidbit for certain people. If they don't do that, maybe start trying to hotkey their buildings to like 3, 4, 5, or 0, or whatever number they feel is more convenient to hit for them, and go from there. So it can kind of help your macro production while you're away from your base and doing other stuff. Makes it easier. So, and we're just gonna see some more creeping here. Jake is about level 5. I think he's gonna, pretty sure he skills devotional war for level 3. I think he does. He hasn't skilled it yet, but I'm pretty sure he goes for Devotion Aura. Yep. So he's got he's gonna have 4.5 extra armor on everything, which is really good. Though, and again, as I said, I don't think that nearly approaches the 50% damage reduction of Howl of Terror level 3. Though, you know, it doesn't cost mana, and they can't counter it with Magic Communion, whereas Howl of Terror doesn't hit Magic Communion units, and you have to get your Pit Lord in there to hit their units with it. So it's a little different, but you know, again, just in terms of damage reduction, slightly less effective. But again, I guess Devotion Aura helps against towers also. The buildings aren't going to be hit by Howl of Terror, so certain slight advantages Devotion Aura has to Howl of Terror, but just overall, I think Howl of Terror is a stronger skill. But anyway, the Paladin is a noble character, Uther, Some people name a game type after Uther Party. So yeah, clearly Jake is just doing this for the religious significance of a paladin, spreading his message of faith across the land. So, but anyway, okay. So the most effective unit elf can get against riflemen is pretty much going to be not breakers. We can't make breakers. Bears and or maybe mountain giants. You know, chimes in certain, I mean, not a straight fight, but chimes can do certain things against rifle players. You know, this base doesn't have any towers, etc., etc. So you could just, you know, run in there and try to haul him, mass up protectors or something crazy. I don't know, but actually, Ancients of War with Nature's Blessing also pretty decent against. They're okay against riflemen now. You know, you can kite Ancients of War. They're pretty slow even with Nature's Blessing, so you know you'd have to play a certain way, but get some dryads or something. But at any rate, he's not making any of that stuff. He's gonna be making dryads, and he's throwing up an Ancient of Wind, so probably dots. Again, both of those don't counter rifles at all. They have unarmored. Their damage type is piercing, not doing or piercing and magic respectively. So not gonna do anything extra against the riflemen based on the armor type, and they just get absolutely shredded. They have short range. Again, I think they have about 100 fewer hit points than our riflemen. At least the dryads do. The dots probably maybe even less, honestly, but you know, with unarmored, it's not even going to be fair. And all this armor, if we look at the 2 armor upgrades, it's going to put the rifleman at 4 base armor, and he gets 4.5 from devotional level 3, so he's pretty much doubling his base armor. Or we can alternatively say he's getting a little bit more than half of this damage reduction number, 34% from the devotional aura. So level 3 devotional aura is getting a little bit more than 17% damage reduction, so maybe 18% or 19%, something like that. But so yes, you know, 17% compared to 50% from level 3 Howl of Terror. You know, again, Howl of Terror doesn't hit everything. There are ways to counter it that wouldn't necessarily counter Devotion Aura, but again, you know, that's still a huge percent difference. You know, 33% difference, or somewhere around there, as far as pure raw damage reduction. So something to keep in mind. Now you notice that Jake has 1 unit type in his army, rifleman, so his upgrades are all hitting his full army, whereas Teal's upgrades only are hitting, I think he's only got the upgrades for the huntresses and the ballista. So you know, again, that's a little inefficient. That's one of the advantages of having a 1 unit type. You can really get a lot of bang for your buck out of the upgrades, and that's sort of one reason why certain strategies work, like fiends, destroyers, and worms, and guards all share the same upgrades. So you know, if you're massing those units, and that gives you a pretty good amount of flexibility. You know, fiends themselves are pretty versatile. With statues and everything else, and yeah, so you know, you can do that, and pretty much get a lot of effectiveness out of the upgrades, because you have a bunch of the units that share those upgrades. So you know, it's something to keep in mind if you're gonna try some kind of 1 unit strategy. I mean, it kind of limits your versatility. You know, certain units you're definitely not gonna be able to do it with. Usually, they're gonna want some range unit that can hit air and ground at the very least. You know, not to mention have maybe some other utility, like being able to magic immune, or you know, counter certain magic spells, like destroyers can devour magic. They're magic immune. They got, you know, they can do the whole Orb of Annihilation, absorb mana thing in mass. They can be really powerful for 1 push mostly. Whereas rifles, they're pretty versatile. They can hit air and ground. they're decent, pretty tanky, decent damage. Build them, from the, build them tier 1 so you can really start massing them immediately. 3 food. And against Elf, they're tier 1. They don't really have a tier 1 melee counter because hunts are the melee from tier 1, and they don't really counter rifles, so, per se, unless you're going to outmass them, so, or take advantage of their mobility and maybe do other things with the huntresses. But yeah, fiends, fiends they can get web and burrow. They can, and they're sort of once they get web, they can hit air and ground just like the rifles. Plus, the web prevents when you start webbing air units, they aren't able to just run away, which is kind of a weakness of the rifleman. They can fly over the trees and stuff and harass workers and make you camp and stuff. So, but this replay is almost over. I hope it was somewhat informative. A little bit different way to play. Again, not the most competitive matchup of these players. Jake is, I'd say, pretty clearly far ahead of these 2 guys he played against. But not to say that these kind of strategies are completely ineffective against opponents. I mean, if you're scouting and you see a hole in your opponent's strategy, I mean, it doesn't matter how much micro. If you can catch them off guard with certain things, then that can be a very effective way to win. There's one strategy against Orc with human that I work on a little bit. That's kind of fun. It's it has a lot of versatility, though it works off of it forces you to kind of give up the initiative at the beginning, which is, or for a large portion of the game, not just the beginning, but sort of the middle game as well, or in a mid game. Which is kind of dangerous, especially if they play against it correctly. They can expand and tower and expansion in the meantime before you really get your chosen unit combination. And then, it becomes, they don't have to have a hard counter. They can just have a mass and, maybe mass towers and just kind of beat you with a war of attrition sort of a deal. So again, it starts to rely a little bit on really good timing and really precise play. But, that strategy, maybe I'll do an audio commentary on it in the future. But it basically relies on a Mountain King and then a Paladin and fast teching up and upgrading while you fast tech up armor scrolls for the Griffins, and you get a barracks also for war training and then for knights, because pure Griffins, they're kind of, they're strong against Orc, a lot of times, but certain sometimes you want to have some tanking ability, because if you go pure Griffins and they go pure mass watchtowers everywhere, Griffins, if they get fortified armor on the watchtowers, then you're going to be fighting an uphill battle. Now, knights are a little better against watchtowers because of normal damage. I think it does 100% to buildings, fortified armor. So, and again, they tank better. I think they tank a little bit better than the Griffins do and such. So, it sort of gives you a little more versatility to have some knights in there also, But at any rate, the strategy just revolves around having really upgraded Griffins and Knights, and playing really effectively with Mountain King Paladin and getting staffs. So, depending on how they counter, it can be very effective. Bat Rider's actually ineffective counter because unless they're really heavy beat on economy, because with the full armor upgrades and animal war training, it becomes, you have to use a lot of bats to kill a Griffin to the effect that it's actually cost ineffective to do so, and that's assuming you actually get the kills, because if you don't micro it right, you're kind of slow with the concoctions or something. The human can holy light it or staff the Griffin away, and then you've wasted 1, 2, maybe 3 Bat Riders, and and you didn't get anything for it. So that is a huge loss of resources. So if they start, you get a couple of saves like that, and your unit gets fully healed with the staff, unless they can go to your base, which again is going to rely on you towering a little bit in tier 1 and then playing accordingly if they do some kind of rush, you might have to get footmen or more towers or whatever, or if they mass wyverns, you're probably gonna have to either add in Dragonhawk riders or gyros, or siege engines with the upgrade are really good against mass wyvern. They're not really, the tanks aren't mobile, but they can guard your base, and if you can get any kind of fight that they have to fight, if you can force a fight, wyvern are not gonna do, they can't fight the tank, so they're gonna have to either try to kite you or do something totally different. So they're a pretty good counter as long as you can you can make them fight you somehow. So, but again, I'll maybe do an audio on that strategy, because it's kind of fun to do. It's really out of the box per se. I mean, because usually games revolve around getting creeping or harassing or getting expansions as fast as you can, making units as fast as you can at the start to sort of gain the initiative, get map control. And this strategy works off the premise that, while you're probably going to want to keep an eye on your opponent, maybe harass them a little bit, maybe get boots on your Mountain King and run around and do bolts a little bit, just to distract him. And, maybe he decides, I'm going to go attack his base and see what's up. And then you've got towers. I mean, towers are pretty effective against grunts and Blade Master or Farseer or what have you. So, attacking your main is not really going to help him very much unless he can, he can maybe tower you in or something crazy. Usually you're going to be fine at your main. So, yeah, it really gives up initiative, and then it forces them to counter you correctly. And yeah, usually they're going to need an expansion. Because they have a pretty good leeway to get an expansion, since you're not going to have much to pressure it early to mid game. So that's pretty much one of the key counters to it. But if they don't do that, or if they mass bat riders to counter your air instead of wyvern or raiders, or a more kind of sustained counter unit that doesn't get punished as much as micro mistakes with bat riders, then the more cost-effective counter, if you will, then they can easily lose to this strategy. Even with an expansion, you can lose if you start doing the bat rider thing. You don't get the kills. Now, if you get the kills, again, you're going to win an attrition war probably, but the strategy has the potential to kind of overcome even an expansion in certain situations if they don't play correctly. So it's kind of an interesting kind of thing to tinker with. But anyway, I hope this was informative and somewhat entertaining for you. So Scrymind out.